And so you can get into just some really cool areas. We've got large open waterways off of, our Charleston harbor, but then you can get into these little small creek systems that are off of our rivers and get in these waters that, a lot of people can't get into. And it's just based on what style of maybe boat you have, or if you're a kayak angler.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing in the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, coming to you from the Lance Chuck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio, Master Captain Angie Scott.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventure Podcast. I'm pleased to bring another exciting guest for you this week. Happy to introduce you to Captain Tanya Dowdy. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Hey, Angie. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. So you're in South Carolina, and I don't think, I haven't really featured a whole lot of lady anglers from South Carolina. I've had BB Harrison on the show. You're in the Charleston area. So, I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit more about fishing in that part of the country and what you do as a captain. If you wouldn't mind, just before we get into all that, to start off by just kind of giving our audience a little background and introduction to who you are and how you got into fishing.
Sure. So I am a native of Charleston, South Carolina, and kind of been a water rat my whole life. My family has a place up on Lake Moultrie, and so kind of grew up in the freshwater segment, doing mostly bass fishing, catfish, brim, and it really wasn't until my mid-20s that I actually got into saltwater fishing. And it's pretty funny. My grandfather and my great-grandfather were avid anglers, and my father not so much. And it was actually his best friend and his best friend's wives were kind of like my other parents who really got me, just sort of passionate about starting to fish for those freshwater fish. And so, again, it really wasn't until kind of my mid-20s, and I've told this story a couple of times, but it still is pretty funny. I bought a new boat and was in Charleston in one of our local waterways, and we're going through this area, and these guys are in this small little aluminum boat, and I see them pull in this ginormous kind of coppery orange colored fish, and I'm like, what in the heck is that? And I had no clue, and it turns out it was a nice, pretty much bull redfish that these guys had pulled into this boat, and I was like, holy mackerel, you can catch that in these waters. And here I am growing up in Charleston, surrounded by salt water, and I had no idea. And that fish led me to the addiction that I now suffer from.
Awesome. So how old were you when your parents' friends first started introducing you to fishing?
Pretty young. We were in the water, obviously, kind of, I almost want to jokingly say right out of the womb. And so, probably really started fishing, probably 3 to 4 years of age, just like most kids. You're starting out with something pretty simple. This will show my age a little bit, but back then, we actually had bamboo cane poles. And so we were fishing off the bank with little floats and catching, brim and shiners and, occasionally a bass or a catfish. And then started fishing, with my first rod and reel setup. And then they actually bought me, I think it was 8th grade. They bought me a nice Daiwa bait caster. And, so I started, learning to fish with, an upgraded version of a rod and reel. And so kind of progressed from there.
Yeah. funny you mentioned that. So I've had a guy on the show before, Clay Myers from the Fish Nerds podcast, and he teaches a lot of kids to fish. And he actually says that that's one of the best ways to teach a kid to fish is just with a simple cane pole setup, because, they have like more advanced versions of that now, but for a kid to not have to deal with a reel when they're first just learning, that allows them to really just focus on setting the hook first, without being distracted with the reeling piece of it, and then kind of add that in as they get more experience with getting a feel for setting a hook. And I thought that was really interesting. I'd never really thought about that before.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I mean, your hand coordination is developing, and you've got to figure out how to do all those things, and so I definitely think it simplifies it in terms of that.
Yeah, and one thing, I asked how old you were when you first got introduced, because another hot topic kind of has been on retention, and not just for women but for kids as well. And I've heard this statistic, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but maybe you've heard it as well and can elaborate. But the younger kids are when they first get introduced to fishing, the more likely they're going to pick it up later in life. So for you kind of had a little bit of a gap there, and you really got back into it in your 20s when you discovered the amazingness of saltwater fishing. And so maybe had you not had that experience as a child, maybe when you had that experience in your 20s, it might not have affected you in the same way. I'm not sure, but it's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think you make a really cool point, and there's probably a lot of truth in that. Thinking back now, if there had been opportunities, to maybe continue fishing and get a fishing scholarship and go to school. I mean, I think about these things now and go, man, I wish this stuff, when I was a kid was being offered, because how unbelievable would have that been to get, a potential opportunity to do that. So, so thankfully whatever happened, the door opened, and again, I saw that redfish, and it created the bug that won't go away now.
Right. Yeah. I think about the same thing. I was just really getting into fishing when I got into high school. Like, we fished freshwater fishing, of course, up in Minnesota where I grew up. Pretty much my whole life, started as a young kid, but I didn't really love it back when I was a kid. I'd get bored. I wanted to go in, but once I got into high school, I started getting that little bit of a competitive bug in me with my dad and my brother, and I wanted to, fish better than them. And I often wondered too, if we had high school opportunities back then, if that wouldn't have been something I would have really gotten into and, could have changed the trajectory of my life. It's great that kids now, a lot of them, not everybody, but it's growing, has these opportunities and even the potential to go on to college and get some of their college paid for fishing. I mean, imagine that.
Yeah, it would be a pretty cool. And I just, again, I mean, any opportunity for, people to, expand and, be able to sort of coexist with something that they love, I just think, helps get you through a lot of things.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I have a little bit of a similar experience as far as getting introduced to saltwater fishing. It wasn't till later in life. I took a trip down to St. George Island, Florida, and got to do some shore fishing or beach fishing. And then we took a charter out and actually did some offshore fishing. That was my first real experience with saltwater species and the variety of fish that you can catch. And, just they're different, and you never know what you're going to get. And that's super exciting. And I was just like, man, this is really cool. I still love freshwater fishing, but you just can't replace the thrill of inshore saltwater fishing. And so I can totally relate to that. And that kind of changed my outlook. I was probably in my mid to late 20s when I had that first experience. And now I'm like, I've got to figure out a way where I can get more of this in my life. And so thankfully with my job now, working for Freedom Boat Club, we don't do a whole lot here in the winter months as far as doing dockside tours and things like that, because it's a little chilly. So I can work thankfully remotely. And now we go down to Florida over the winter, and I get to get that itch scratched.
Very nice.
A little bit. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. So fast forward, now here you are, you've got your captain's license, you've started doing charters. What was that kind of process? How did that look for you?
Yeah, so my husband and I had a business that we ended up selling, and we decided it was time to simplify life. So we sold our custom log home that we built and moved into a much smaller, very simple house, and just decided, we want to start living our lives for ourselves and enjoy family and friends. And so my good buddy at the time was the manager of the local tackle shop here in Charleston, Hadrell's Point Tackle. We've actually got 2 locations, and so give him a little shout out. Yeah. And I had jokingly said to him years before, I said, "Hey, one day I'm going to come work for you." And he, of course, he laughed, and, we thought it was kind of funny. And so when he found out that, I no longer, was working and kind of thinking or considering of being in full retirement, he says to me, he says, "Hey, I need some help with the shop. Do you think, you could come and help?" And so I said, "Sure, why not?" And so I started working a couple of days a week at the tackle shop, and that opened the door to, just so many people and meeting, just people that were passionate about fishing. And one of the local charter captains, he and his wife actually came in and said, "Hey, we're thinking about starting this program called Safer Boater, and we are looking, for more captains, and we really want another female captain, and we want you to, to join our team." And it's a nonprofit that actually teaches boating skills, how to dock, how to learn the waterways, and really just help new boaters or, even boaters that have experience, kind of tweak themselves and just become better and comfortable in the waterway. So I said, I thought about it, and I said, this kind of sounds cool. And I said, well, I don't have my captain's license. I guess I better get my booty in gear here and get that done. And so while I was working on that, friends and my coworkers were like, "Hey, Tanya, you ought to, think about, running some charters." And of course, I was like, "Oh gosh, if I start doing that, I'm not going to like fishing anymore." It's going to, just make me not want to do it. And so I was just like, "No, I'm never going to be a charter captain. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it." And then finally I was like, "All right, I'm going to give this a whirl." And so I really started thinking about what I wanted to do as far as running charters. And, it didn't take long. I just said, I'd really like to create a niche where I can get more female anglers interested and out on the water and comfortable. Cause I feel like a lot of times, you get people on the boat that maybe just haven't either done it before or just don't feel like they've got the skill set, and they're intimidated. And so they aren't as eager to go out. And so that's, kind of what my foundation was. And, certainly I like to get anybody out because I love to take people fishing, and, and it's just to get to see somebody catch either their first fish or, their biggest fish is always exciting. And so that was, kind of what led me to starting the business. And, I'm still pretty new. I've only been doing this a little over a year now. I'm certainly growing, but, I figured why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other female charter captains in that area, or not many?
So we don't have many. I think there's one running out of Folly Beach. And then I've got, a couple other friends that do a little bit as well. But there's definitely not very many of us. I mean, you go down to, Florida, and there's lots of female captains, and I'm sure, other places, but it's surprising to me that there aren't more female captains in Charleston, but, hopefully that's changing. And, I'm only doing this business, part-time, but I would love to see it grow. I mean, I think it'd be great to have more, female captains out there running trips and, encouraging more women. So if I can encourage more ladies to get out there and get their captain's licenses and do this, it certainly would make me happy to know that, I kind of, pushing that avenue for people to try.
In South Dakota, hunting is our shared legacy, something everyone can be a part of. That's why we're focused on making our fields a welcome place for everyone. See how at huntthegreatestsd.com, where you can hear stories from sportswomen and learn what makes South Dakota the world's pheasant capital. While you're there, check out public land maps, hunting blogs, and season information for one unforgettable fall. Learn more at huntthegreatestsd.com. Yeah, that's great, and thank you for putting yourself out there and doing that, because it's so important. And we've talked about this on the show before with other guests, but in general, it seems like women seem to be more comfortable fishing with other female captains just because there's a little less pressure. And, there's some other reasons, but it's good to have those outlets for women that want to get out there and try it, but might be intimidated otherwise. So what was it like getting your captain's license? Because I have mine as well, and it is quite a process.
So it was obviously during the height of COVID, which is thrown a monkey wrench, I think, into just a lot of the way we get to do things. And so, I really wasn't comfortable having to sit into a classroom. And it was kind of cool. C-School actually was offering what they call distance learning. And so I was able to take my class, it was just pretty much like a Zoom class. And so we, had a live instructor, and, it definitely, I think, was better than trying to do it myself online, just because I'm definitely a visual person and kind of need the help. The only downside was, I didn't have, my instructor right behind my shoulder when I was learning to do all that charting and plotting. And, there was definitely moments when, I wanted to cry because I wasn't sure I was going to figure it out. And, you thankfully have the aha moment and go, okay, now I can do this. But, it's a tough course. The instructor said, hey, you're basically going to be getting a college degree in 6 days. And he wasn't lying. No. I mean, the amount of information that you have to learn and understand was daunting. And, I certainly was up for the challenge, but there was a lot of sleepless nights. And, I had that chart in my husband's office and took over his office and, just spent hours and hours, making sure, I was going to pass those tests. Yeah. And, so I got through it, and, they were like, you probably want to take your tests pretty quickly after you'd have done the course. And so I think we had an opportunity 2 days after we finished our class to go. And I said, heck yeah, I'm doing all this. I'm not going to go back and do one test and then another. And I was like, let's get it all done, and then take the deep breath and, cross your fingers that you passed. And, I did really well, which I'm proud of myself for. And, so it came to fruition, and here I am.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on passing that. I did mine online, so I did the Mariners Learning System, and without having like a set scheduled time to, have an instructor or whatever, you're just completely doing it on your own. They give you a year to do it, so of course I waited until I had 2 months left, and I'm like, okay, crunch time, And I remember one weekend I worked. This was before I started working for Freedom Boat Club. I worked in the music business, and we had a big conference room. And I remember one weekend I went in and I spread that map out on the conference room table, and I just kind of locked myself in there for 2 days until I got it all figured out. But I was like you, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get this. This is not going the way that it should, but it all worked out. Ended up, I think I got 100% on the test. So,
I did too, and I was so proud of myself.
That's awesome. Way to go. All right. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about the Safe Boater program you mentioned. I hadn't heard of that before. Is that a local thing or is it national?
So the saferboater.org actually is a new nonprofit in Charleston, South Carolina, that was started. I guess it's been a little over a year now. And we offer women's classes. So there's actually another female captain that teaches with me. We do kids, and then of course we do co-eds and adults. We can do private stuff through that. So it's an avenue and an outlet for people to be able to get into the boating world, and hopefully just get some education. And they actually get a certification. There's 2 different certifications. So you get a NASPL certification. Mm-hmm. And anybody that passes, we do, it's a 16-hour course that we offer, and it's on the water training as well as in the classroom. They can actually go to just about any state in the United States and then, rent a boat or take a boat, because this class and certification lets them, have that capability. So it's pretty cool. And again, we all talk about just COVID and what it did. And so what that did for, I know Charleston, just as a water and boating industry, is it's exploded. And so we have, I think it's great that all these people want to get out, but now we've got, potential waterways that, aren't quite as safe as they used to be, because, anybody can jump on a boat and, get behind the wheel, and you don't have to have any experience. And, in South Carolina, we actually don't have any sort of legislation as far as, people that are over the age of 16, they can hop on and do whatever the heck they want. So this was just a way to hopefully help promote and, give people an opportunity, if they want to learn, to know they can get out on that water, and at least, if they're behind the wheel, know that they're going to know the right and wrong things to do, and be conscious as a captain behind the wheel.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I know here in the Nashville area is same thing. We've definitely exploded as far as new boaters getting out there, and a lot of them being inexperienced. Here in Tennessee, you do have to have your Tennessee Safe Boaters card if you were born after January 1st, 1989. But anybody else before then's grandfathered in, which doesn't really make 100% sense to me.
Right, you're older, but can you actually drive the boat?
Right, yeah. But at least we have that in place. But it's just a classroom thing. There's no hands-on, like on the water, anything like that. And I get asked so many times because so me having my captain's license, how I got on with Freedom Boat Club was initially as I was a trainer. So we have all new members go through a 2-hour online, used to be in person, but with COVID, we turned it into an online course. And then we take them out 2 hours on the water, one-on-one, to actually get on the boat, show them how to operate, we just go through a lot of different things. And then they have unlimited free training beyond that. So if, that 2-hour session, they're still not comfortable, they're more than welcome to request as much training as they want beyond that. And that's all included with membership. But that's not something that a general boater has access to. So if you're, going to buy a boat, used or new, wherever you may be buying it, I get people asking all the time, where can I, get some on the water experiences? Or there's really nowhere around us that offers anything like that. So I think that's super awesome. And I wish that would, expand to other cities, because
and I think it is. I mean, we definitely are expanding in South Carolina, and I think that's the goal, is to just try to get, this to grow, so that there are, opportunities for people to not have to travel to go, and get that certification. So
great. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I do want to touch on the fishery there in the Charleston area. I've heard it referred to as the Lowcountry, and a lot of marshes, and me not being experienced or ever having fished that area, I was wondering if you could kind of explain what it's like and what that means.
Yeah. So the Lowcountry, clearly we're pretty flat here. And our waterways are surrounded with this marshland. So we've got this Spartina grass, and we've got this what we call pluff mud, which smells kind of a sulfury. I call it a home smell. I love it when I smell it. There's a lot of people go, "What is that smell?" And I'm like, "That's our pluff mud." And then we, certainly have there's lots of oysters, and so these habitats are wonderful for small little creatures. And then you got those creatures that get fed on, which would be a lot of our great fish that we have. And so you can get into just some really cool areas. We've got large open waterways off of, our Charleston harbor, but then you can get into these little small creek systems that are off of our rivers and get in these waters that, a lot of people can't get into. And it's just based on what style of maybe boat you have, or if you're a kayak angler. I actually fish out of an action craft. It's the 1890 Flatsmaster. So I can get in pretty shallow water, and that lets me get to, fish that not the average boater can get into. And we have an amazing fishery here all year round. And thankfully, our winters tend to be mild. So you can definitely take people out all year long and catch some decent fish. And my addiction is, of course, chasing redfish. And, when I do a lot of my charter trips, I kind of ask people what they want to do. And, if they're a new angler or, maybe haven't ever caught one, I do like to try to push them to go, try to catch an overslot redfish, just because there's nothing like it on the end of a line. And definitely gets my heart racing. But we've got, it's beautiful here. We've kind of got like a dark sort of tannic water. It's not super clear, but it offers really good, like I said, really good fishing.
Awesome. So besides redfish, what are some of the other species that you go after?
So speckled trout, which is kind of in the last couple of years, I've gotten pretty excited about catching. Our large speckled trout are not as plentiful, but when you get one, man, it's an amazing catch. We also have a pretty good flounder fishery here. Then we've got black drum, sheep's head. That's kind of our main sort of inshore. And then, if it's a nice day, we've got what are referred to as our Charleston jetties. And that's kind of the entrance where our big ships will come through. And we've got these big rock piles on either side of that channel. And it provides really good fishing as far as pretty much any kind of species. And then we've got some of our nearshore reefs that even on a calm day, and if you've got a flats boat like mine, you can go out there and you have a chance for getting cobia and, maybe some grouper, triggerfish, so there's an opportunity here to kind of get out and fulfill sort of whatever you want. And, we have a ton of people that offshore fish here, but, you got to go out, 30 to 60 miles really to do that. So our inshore fishery, hands down, I think is, it's pretty darn good here.
Awesome. Love it. Well, very cool. So one thing I wanted to touch on, because you were on a recent episode of the Tide Chasers podcast, and I can share that in the show notes for this episode. So you guys kind of touched on some other stuff. So if people are interested, they can go check out that episode as well. But in that, you talked about St. Croix rods and a trip that you got to go on and experience catching it sounds like pretty massive Jack Crevalle. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but also just give a plug to St. Croix because I'm also with them and love their rods. And how did you get involved with St. Croix?
So I met of course, the tackle shop here at the time. Randy Hamilton was our local St. Croix rep. He's actually now running the Fly Shop, which is kind of a sister store for Hadrill's Point Tackle. But he introduced me into the St. Croix line, and he was always really great to the employees of the tackle shop. And after I'd been at the tackle shop for a short while, he's like, I got this rod for you. And anybody that knows me knows I'm not a frilly girl by any means. And I don't, hopefully nobody takes that wrong, but I'm just, I'm a girly girl, but I'm not a girly girl. I know I'll throw a dress on in a skinny minute, but I love my flip flops and my shorts. And so he comes in with this pink rod, or it's kind of a fuchsia color, Avid Pearl. And it's really a cool rod. We actually had him in the shop, and I was like, I really like the way this rod looks and feels. And so he's like, I've got something for you. So he actually brought and gave me the rod, and I put a Shimano Stratic reel on that thing and started fishing with it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a nice, this is a nice rod. And so I just started, of course, using that rod, and then, working in the shop, more and more of those rods started winding up in my arsenal. And, I tried to do a pretty good job on, social media of tooting the horns of, companies that either I use and, obviously support. And so St. Croix, started noticing that, and brought me on to, to the team. And I guess, I don't know, maybe a month or so after I joined the team, I get an email from Savannah. Mm-hmm. Of course, who's their angler manager. Yeah. And she's like, hey, we are doing this photo shoot in Alabama and would love for you to come and help us with it. And I'm like, what? I about fell out on the floor. And I didn't even have to think twice about it. I was like, heck yeah, just an opportunity to go to a different place I'd never been to. But, to maybe get to experience just, a different kind of fishing. And so I jumped on that, and it was the most probably amazing, incredible fishing experience, I've had. So we, the weather wasn't real cooperative the first day, but then the second day we got out and we got wind that these big Jack Crevalle and bull redfish were busting and feeding in this back bay area. And it was, it was pretty shallow. I'm talking 2 to 6 feet of water. And I was like, this is crazy. And so we get out there, and of course everybody's just super excited on the boats because, we're getting to see something that you don't get to see. And Captain Justin Carter, who is with St. Croix as well, he's a charter captain here in Charleston. He and I were on the boat together, and I kind of knew him. We knew of each other, but didn't really know each other. And so, of course, we got to, kind of be buddies on the boat, and we see this thing, and I'm freaking out because I don't know what to do. I'm like, I've never seen this before. And so he just finally was like, he's like, just cast anywhere, because I'm looking around, where do I throw this, this big bait? Yeah. And so I casted that thing out and hooked into, it was well over a 35, pound fish. And wrangled it to the boat, actually surprisingly pretty quick. And they looked at me like, how did you get that fish to the boat so fast? And I was like, I don't know. I'm sure it was adrenaline. You're right. But, I'm hollering at one of the other guys on the boat and, probably said some explicit words about, not to lose this fish, because I knew it was a fish that, I probably would never get to catch again, that size. And we got that thing over the rail, and I was just... ecstatic, and I think probably in shock for a little while. Yeah. But it was amazing. And then, to get to one sight cast of these fish and, of course, catch them on artificial, which I love to do, was so cool. So I got to catch it on a, St. Croix Roy, which was awesome. And I also got to catch it on a Z-Man bait, which another local company here in Charleston who has done an unbelievable job in the fishing industry. And those guys they're such another great company, and they're big supporters of those female anglers. So it was an unbelievable experience, and definitely one that, I will always cherish.
That's great. That's such a great story. I mean, the Jack Crevalles I've caught in my time have not been anywhere near that big, and they fight like they are. So I can't imagine getting one that's actually that size.
It's like a freight train on the end of the line. It's just, and there's people that don't think that that's a quality fish to catch. And I'm thinking, you obviously haven't had one on the end of a line, because I would go chase those all day long.
Oh, me too. They're so much fun. Love it. Well, very cool. Where in Alabama was that?
That was in the Gulf Shores.
Okay. Nice.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. I love, I'm sure you feel the same way, just kind of being in this industry and having those incredible opportunities that come up from time to time. It's just such a blessing.
It has. It's been nice. I mean, I will say, I've had some good companies that have just shown wonderful support for me as a lady angler, and as a female charter captain. So it's, if you don't mind, I'll give a couple of shout outs here, but, my great guys at, Ice Strike Fishing, again, a local Charleston company, very, very proud to be supported by those guys. Again, Z-Men Fishing. I just was fortunate to jump on board with AFCO, and I've got Rio's sunglasses, and of course St. Croix. So it's been awesome to have the support, for them to recognize, hey, we've got somebody here that is passionate about this and wants to spread the word and just get more people involved in what a great opportunity that we have to share a resource that is so good for communities and cities, and so
it's great. Well, before we wrap this up, I mentioned that Tide Chasers podcast episode you did recently, and I learned that you and I have something in common, other than just a passion for fishing and all that, but we both have a certain species on our bucket list, and that is a peacock bass.
Yes.
So do you have any plans to cross that off your list, or just hoping to have an opportunity one day?
I don't have any. Well, I've got a couple of places certainly in mind. I mean, I'd love to catch 10, 12 pounder, right off the bat, but even a small one. But I know I haven't actually met her, and I know you actually just had her on the show not that long ago. But I do know Captain Debbie Hansen's pretty good at putting people on those peacock bass. So I've actually mentioned to the other half. I said, I might have to go down and take a trip with Debbie and see if we can catch one. But it's a gorgeous fish, and just definitely one that I want to get on the end of a line.
Yes. Well, maybe we can knock ours out together, because that's my plan is this winter when I'm down in Florida, I'll be actually in Fort Myers, which is really close to Debbie. And so we were going to do it last year, and then COVID kind of interrupted our plans, and I didn't get my peacock bass, but this year it's going to happen. So maybe we should coordinate a time where we can both go out and do it with Debbie together. That would be super fun.
I think that would be a pretty cool boatload of exciting anglers.
Yes, yes, it would. Well, very cool. So where can people find you if they're in the Charleston area and they want to go out and experience some of this awesome fishing that you've got there?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, which is Reel, REEL, Chica, CHICA, charters.com. They can also find me on Instagram at Reel Chica. And you can go to the local tackle shop and say, hey, who's the peanut-sized blonde female charter captain? And not hard to miss. So those are kind of the ways. But yeah, any and everybody, you want to get out there, especially you gals, give me a shout out, and, we can have an awesome day on the water. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for taking some time to be on the show. It was a real pleasure having you on. And let's stay connected and see if we can't make that happen.
Absolutely. And it was a great time. And thank you again for having me as well.